Well, a very good day to you, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to another episode of the Candy Talk here on Herman Manyora's YouTube channel. My name is Evans Okinyi. Prof, how are you?
Good.
Uh-huh.
Yes.
Elections next year or 2027? Let's begin from there.
2027.
Yeah. What were you saying? So you disagree with Willie's assertions?
I carried that narrative, but I interrogated myself and I found it can't work.
Okay.
Yeah. In the 5th year, nobody said 5th calendar year. No, on the 5th year.
In the 5th year.
So the first year starts 2022 August 9th or what thereabouts to 2023 8th August. That's 1 year.
That's 1 year.
So like that, you'll find in the 5th year, we'll start somewhere in 2026 and end somewhere in August 2027.
But the
so long as you don't skip that date.
But the second Tuesday of August 2027 falls outside the 5th year.
That's another trick.
No,
Those are some of the small things they will
So that is why the participants say,
Yes.
let's have it in 2026.
Yeah. I know. I had those arguments in 20. I was saying the elections ought to have been held in 2021. But I've done self-interrogation. And I'm sure there may be need to make a few amendments here and there to tweak the law a bit to accommodate those things.
Okay. On the face of it, if we look at it without going through the nitty-gritties of that, of course, people are talking about Kumi Bila break. Is it that the country is not well informed because currently the president isn't even guaranteed the 5-year term?
Isn't?
Guaranteed the 5-year term that was initially there.
This is a democracy.
So
anybody, the constitution envisages situations where the president can go before 5 years. Yeah.
If the calculation is done that way, and it's indeed true that if we stick to the constitution, then it should be in 2026, do you think the government of the day can actually allow that to happen?
Again, you see, as Kenyans, we must move away from saying the government of the day. Constitutional dictates are not to be implemented because the government of the day wants to. No. The constitution just is self-propelling. If the constitution says that elections will be such a time, so what do you mean by government? Who is government? The time for something to happen comes, that something should just happen. Not government. Government has no role at all in determining. The days of the election date being a secret weapon are over. We buried it in the old constitution. Yeah.
Let's wait and see what happens till then. I want us to focus on the current phase of opposition and look at the chances of them unseating President William Ruto. Of course, I heard the president say, look, these people do not have any agenda. And of course, we will triumph over them.
Atawachapa asubuhi.
Asubuhi na mapema.
Yes.
And Professor Kithure Kindiki is also saying...
He said, yeah.
Yeah.
Na nimesikia hata sauti imebadilika.
Sauti imebadilika. Ama mimi nimenotice kwamba sauti imebadilika.
You noticed?
Yeah, I noticed.
Yeah.
So look at President William Ruto's camp here. First of all, do you think that he is likely to retain Professor Kithure Kindiki?
It is possible. You see, sometimes when it is difficult to make a decision, you go with the status quo. It's much easier. You don't have to explain anything. Yeah. If you try to get Mudavadi, then Mount Kenya, oh, okay. If you try to get, so it's easier to go with the status quo.
Okay.
That gives Kindiki a very high chance. Yeah.
Talking of Kindiki now, what is it that he brings on board here? Because the other time we were having this conversation about the possible rift between Mount Kenya East and Mount Kenya West, of course, the other side led by Gachagua. But then of late, if you look at the developments therein, it's like the Mount Kenya East side has also bolted.
But
the likes of
Manyora.
No, leave alone Manyora on the western side. I'm talking about the eastern side. Yeah. We thought that they would actually rally behind Professor Kithure Kindiki, and therefore the president would have it easy on that other side.
That's what that was the calculation from the Kenya Kwanza side, from the president, that you give Kindiki, you divide the mountain to east and west. That didn't work. In fact, it turned out to be very bad for him.
Yeah.
You saw what happened in Embu and the rest of those places. But you see, if he maintains Kindiki in 2027 as his running mate, my friend, the game could change.
How?
The game could change.
How?
These people will be told, how stupid are you? This man is going to be the president in 2032. Your brothers from the West have had Kenyatta. They have had Kenyatta 1, Kenyatta 2, Kibaki. Nyinyi yenyu ni kupiga kura tu. This is your chance. Yeah, it can work. In fact, from where I sit, that Kindiki or somebody from the mountain can deliver a lot of votes for Ruto. Amidst all that hostility. Because now, you know, it's easy to talk now and to display anger and everything else. But when the chips are finally down, munaonesha ndio hii kitu. Huyu mtu anaenda kuwa president ya Kenya. It can work wonders, I'm telling you.
Okay.
Yeah.
So do they vote at that moment or vote with some sort of an eye into the future?
Of course, you are voting with the eye in the future. In other words, if Ruto doesn't become president in 2027, Kindiki will go nowhere, and the community will not have a chance to be president.
You see, sometimes you make me wonder what is the main reason as to why a presidential candidate in this country would go for a particular individual as a running mate?
Yeah, because of the votes.
Because of the votes.
Yeah.
So if we look
I
at it...
think for Ruto, the choice is very clear. For Ruto, the choice is between Mudavadi and Kindiki. There's nothing else. It's either Mudavadi or Kindiki.
So on the face of it, Kindiki comes from the eastern side. And we assumed, as I've told you here, we assumed that the western side has gone. But of course, with the kind of pattern that we're witnessing in the eastern side, doesn't it leave Professor Kithure Kindiki naked? Therefore, why would the president still go
naked
for him without
now,
votes, without
trying
any
to
sort
say,
of background?
Today, Kindiki has not ticked, as they say. It has not brought benefits to Ruto. The people have not accepted, both the East and the West. But come 2027, if Ruto maintains Kindiki, things will change dramatically almost. People will be told.
What magic is going to happen within 1 year?
But these are people are being told now your son is going to be president of this country. You think that's a small thing? Yeah.
So they're going...
Right now, people know Ruto is just playing with them. Come 2027, he'll give somebody else. Yeah.
For a man who's been termed to be lying like Ananias, I don't have to... I don't want to use these terms, but then that is the kind of treatment that the president has received so far from Kenya.
That seat is powerful.
How will these people know that the president is not paying lip service?
Give it to anybody. Put anybody in State House.
Okay.
And you will see, he will change. He will have power. So Kindiki may look weak. But let him go into the second term with Ruto and you see. You'll see a different Kindiki.
So you'd encourage the president actually to go for...
No, you see, again, the president will have to make serious calculations. Towards that period, you can see what Manyora is saying, it doesn't seem to be working. It may not work. And therefore, he may be convinced that giving Kindiki is a waste of time. Okay? Brings no capital. The other option is Mudavadi. Now, again, Ruto will have to calculate. Because he has the intelligence. He will know who is the presidential flag bearer for the opposition. Who is the likeliest candidate? If, for example, it is Natembeya who is going to be running mate, giving Mudavadi will be a waste of time.
Okay.
Yeah, it will be a waste of time. But if now this compromise so that, okay, Matiang'i, you are young. You deputize Kalonzo. So the ticket is Kalonzo and Matiang'i. Ruto should not think twice before giving Mudavadi the ticket.
Okay.
Yeah. It's automatic. You give Mudavadi and... Because Luyas will be saying we were fighting for this thing, we were saying we are going to be part of this new government. Now it is Matiang'i and Kalonzo. Okay, watch our end. So if Mudavadi is the running mate, then the Luyas will more than 70% vote for Ruto. It is that simple. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Somebody saying here that maybe you you're calculating so much. You really want the president to go home.
I don't want him to go.
You want the president to go home based on the kind of advices that you're giving him. But that
I want
aside,
him to go home if he gives him that. No, I'm saying it's just simple political logic.
Okay.
If Natembeya has been made running mate to Gachagua, for example, and that's the most formidable ticket come 2027, why would you waste your chance giving Mudavadi running mate?
Okay.
Because he would be not much for Natembeya in terms of getting Luya votes. Natembeya will excite the crowd. But if, on the other hand, the Luya have been left out totally, why not give Mudavadi? Why not?
Okay. So in short, you're saying here that the choice of the deputy...
Another thing before... For example, if Gachagua were to run, so the chance of being the Mount Kenya people producing a president and a running mate, which will they go for? Which one? This is just logic, yeah? If Gachagua decides to run, say with Natembeya,
Okay.
or with somebody else, whatever, Matiangi, whatever it is, tell me what will be the value in Kindiki for Ruto? Zero.
Definitely zero.
Zero. So this is just political logic.
In that way, we assume that perhaps the mountain would have a presidential candidate.
They can have a president.
Okay, they can do that.
Gachagua can run.
Let's look at the other side, the one that...
And your friend Willis and his boss, they can run.
Yeah, my friend Willis and his... And by the way, have they actually done enough to convince you that Jimmy Wanjigi, now that he comes from the mountain, that somehow he can actually give these people a good run for their money from that particular area?
Jimmy Wanjigi is playing, is dancing. There's a dance somewhere and he's dancing, but he's dancing from outside the house. People are dancing inside and he's dancing outside. You miss the beats sometimes. So he's out of touch.
They're saying that they are playing another level of
Which
politics.
level? There's no level.
But
This is,
what you are...
this is simple politics. The people currently driving the mountain agenda are Rigathi Gachagua openly and Uhuru Kenyatta in a subtle, covert manner. So if you are outside those two, you are just a joker.
They're saying here that they are looking for what they term as national appeal.
Which national appeal? There's nothing like that. It has never been there anywhere in the world. You first get some local appeal to propel you. You must find a base on which to stand. A rocket cannot just...
Okay.
Yeah, you must launch it. Yeah.
Talking about that, of course, the side that the Deputy President, Professor Kithure Kindiki, says kwamba watawakaranga is now led by Rigathi Gachagua, the former Deputy President, and they are also determined. They are telling the President, look, our intention is to make sure that you are a one-term president.
Yes.
And the President accuses them of lacking an agenda, save for that. I wonder whether that is also an agenda, but of course, Rigathi Gachagua said the other time that, first of all, we must make sure that you're out. Let's look at it. When you looked at the kind of a group, you remember that group photo?
Yes.
Of Martha Karua, of course, all those individuals therein. And even the former CS for Agriculture, Mithika Linturi, was also there. And then Fred Matiang'i and all these people here. The people were like, really, what is happening here? I saw even Morara Kibaso look at them and say, look, this is not the kind of faces that we would want to aspire change in this country. And I saw you reply to him and told him, go slow, my son. What do you make of that face? Do you think that the character of individuals therein kind of may actually disadvantage the opposition?
You see, it is the old versus the old.
Yes.
And unless we make a radical departure from our politics the way it has been played, it will remain like that. In other words, we have a politics that is defined and played by big names. Big names, big tribes, big communities, regional politics. Unless we make a serious departure from that, the Morara Kebasos and the Manyoras and the rest will have to wait a little longer. That's for that. So, if there is no major departure, and the politics remains the way it is, then you cannot have a chance in Morara Kebaso. It has to be one of those people you saw in that picture. And it is possible that one of those people in that picture can beat Ruto. Just like Moi was defeated in 2002 by one of those people, Mwai Kibaki. He was just one of the old. So from this old, what Morara Kebaso could be saying, and I would agree with, is that for us to move this country to the next level, we have to look beyond those old names, old faces. We have to do our politics differently. We have to re-engineer the politics of this country so that we see politics beyond the big tribes, the big names, the regions with big numbers, big families. So I would agree with Morara Kebaso to that extent, that to transform this country, you must re-engineer the politics of this country. In fact, I hold the view that a necessary first step to changing this country is to make a serious departure from the big parties.
Okay.
So long as the politics is controlled by the big parties, we will never see change in this country. So there have been countries like El Salvador, Senegal, and a few other countries where other things, Ukraine or something like that. I'm forgetting. Some former Soviet Union place. I can't remember. There are a few countries where people have departed from the major parties and either embraced independent candidates or people with very fringe parties to re-engineer the politics of the country. So I would agree with Morara Kebaso that change may not very easily come from these old faces we are seeing here. But that's not what we are talking about now. We are talking about defeating Ruto. And defeating Ruto, we will have to bank on one of those people there to defeat Ruto. It can't be Morara Kebaso.
And they say, who tells you that they must actually bank on those, one of those
Who
people
else? Who else? Until we change our politics,
So
it can only be the people from big tribes, big names, and so on and so forth.
do you believe that
Big money.
that the country has not reached that point where we can actually have a total overhaul and change of the system?
You have your answer. And you are given a glimpse of that in June last year. Yeah, it's possible.
Because
But the Gen Zs were making a statement that we can reimagine a new Kenya. Yeah, that's what the Gen Zs were saying. So you have your answer. It's possible.
these people are looking at, because if you look at the other side, you accuse the President William. One of the reasons is why, one, you say that he has messed the economy of the country. At the same time, these young people are saying, look, for the very reason that there were extrajudicial killings in this country, and especially most young people lost their lives, for that reason, Ruto must go. That is what they say. Yes. At the same time, when they look on the other side, the alternative leadership that is being offered, you are seeing people with questionable characters, people who've been accused of doing the same things. They're like, now these guys in opposition and the current regime are one and the same thing. And therefore, we need a fresh kind of mind. And you're here telling me here that we're not there as a country. So would that then therefore mean that our politics is getting back to the tribal and ethnic kind of arrangements that you've always said?
You see, there is the ideal and there is the practical. The ideal is that this country must move away from tribe. Because when we begin to suffer, when hunger comes, it doesn't spare the Kalenjin.
Yes.
Because Ruto is president. Kikuyu children are still going to school barefoot. Hundreds of thousands of them with jiggers in their toe. Yet the Kikuyus have produced 3 presidents. We've seen misery in Baringo. People eating roots and wild things. But Moi was president for 24 years. So the ideal would be that for Kenyans to know the mere fact of Aluya being president doesn't change your status. If you are a poor, you remain poor. We must change our country. And you cannot change a country without getting proper leadership. And therefore, we should not allow tribe to determine who becomes the president or your MCA or your MP or your governor. It's not be your clan, not your tribe, not your subgroup, not the language you speak, but let's look at the substance
Okay.
of the person. Because that person is a small person, is an MCA, but they will determine the future of your children 100 years
Okay.
from now. So be careful. That's where we need to go.
Yeah.
But that is ideal. But even if it's an ideal, we will encourage the Kebasos and the Manyoras and the rest to keep talking about it until we get it.
So we're not yet there.
But we cannot be blind to the reality that until we get there, ndume ambaye atapigana na Ruto atatoka kwa hiyo watu wako hapo.
So we are still getting
Hao watu.
we are still getting back to the
Yes, hao ndio tutatoa mmoja hapo apigane na Ruto. Atakuwa Martha Karua, atakuwa Matiang'i,
So
atakuwa yeyote, lakini kutoka hapo, sio nje ya hapo. Ndio nikakwambia rafiki yako Willis na mtu yake Jimmy Wanjigi. Kama hawako hapo, hawana chance ya kumenyana na nani? Na William Ruto. That's the reality.
So you're saying practically, if we look at it, then we are getting back to our tribal kind of politics.
We are there,
That
but
is
there is always hope.
So if that is the case, tell me, how many people, how many votes do you think are there in the Kisii region?
What do you mean by that? They could
Just
have a million votes.
because of
what?
late. Do you believe that if that is the case, then what are the chances of Matiang'i getting it?
But nobody ever gets votes because they have sufficient from home.
Ah.
Raila only, how many votes did Raila get in the last election? Please.
You
Raila only got 1.4 million votes from Luo Nyanza, the 4 Luo counties. Go and check.
Okay.
Only 1.4 out of 2.1 registered. So what are you telling me?
Okay.
Did that stop Raila from getting almost 8 million votes? No, it didn't. So Matiang'i can start with 1 million from Nyamira and the Kisii counties. But if he has been embraced by other Kenyans, as it looks most likely that Matiang'i may be embraced fully by the Mount Kenya community. So is it still the Kisii vote you are looking at?
That would mean that we break from the tribal kind of arrangement that you are talking about here. But you told me we are not
No,
yet there.
tribe now, tribe does not mean the tribe must always produce somebody. But the weight of a tribe can be brought to benefit another tribe. So it is still tribal.
Okay.
So the Luos and the other people supported Kibaki against Moi. Was Moi's choice. Okay? The Gema community, the mountain community, as a block supported Ruto. That's kind of arrangement I'm talking about.
And if,
in other words, it is not normal that all Luos can see fault in Raila and therefore 200,000-300,000 of them votes for Ruto. That's not normal. It can't be a normal curve. So we are operating an abnormal situation. That's what I'm talking about. A normal situation means even in a home of 12, 15 people, a man and his wife and his children and his daughters-in-law who have been married in the home, and the mature grandchildren, homes like ours of about 20, 30 people, sure. A home alone. It is not normal that all of us can vote for one person standing for MP. No, that's not normal. Now, how much more so in terms of abnormality? When you are telling me a whole group of Kisis will then vote for Matiang'i. That's not normal.
okay.
So that's the abnormal politics I'm talking about. But it's not just Kenya. It becomes something of concern because the ethnicity here is tribe. But in America, there are other ethnicities, but they are still ethnicities nevertheless. Yeah.
Okay.
They are in terms of Hispanics, in terms of blacks, in terms of blue-collar workers, in terms of women, in terms of educated versus uneducated, white versus black, and so on and so forth. Those are all ethnicities. So ours is more serious because it is tribe. And tribe can become very emotional. Yeah.
There has been that kind of assertion that in this country we are yet to see, or rather we are not likely to see a president emerge from outside the, let me talk of the three major or the four major tribes that we have within the country. And therefore, that leaves actually the Kisis outside. If at all we are supposed to stick with that kind of arrangement, how long do you think it will take us?
That's wrong first before you continue, because at the time Moi was becoming president,
Yes.
the Kalenjin were a very small group. They were so tiny. You can check your census results. They were nowhere among.
Okay.
At that time, the Kalenjin were not even in the top 5. They were almost number 8. So what are you saying? Okay. The Kisis are higher up in numbers, relatively, in a comparative sense, today than the Kalenjin were in 1978 when Moi became president. Yeah. Okay. So that is not an argument.
So that is not an argument.
No.
So you're saying here that that is not so.
Because the Kisi,
up to a
as
point,
you look at the bracket, top bracket, the Kisi are among the top. Yeah. So if you start Luya or Kikuyu, Luya, you come to somehow the Kalenjin became around there. I don't know how it happened. Then you have the Kamba, then you the Somali in between hapa iko mambo inafanyika hapo. Kidogo unakuta uko na Wakisi. Na Wameru, si hapo. So they are not very far.
Okay, so if what you're saying is the case, then it means that we may even have a Giriama president in the country currently.
It depends on the circumstances.
Okay.
If Moi's case is anything to go by. I've told you by the time Moi was becoming a president, people were happy because he was coming from a small group. First of all, even this thing, Kalenjin, was not quite selling. It was Tugen. So you ask, you gave which example of who? Giriama.
Yeah.
Yeah. So Tugen and Giriama, who are more? Tugen are a tiny group. Giriama are many. They are all over Kilifi. So that argument doesn't quite, but in the background, we know that our politics is tribal, is regional, based on big names, big families, big money. Okay. So Morara Kibaso has a big challenge. What Morara Kibaso should be doing, that's why I told him go slow. I would advise Morara Kibaso, because he's a promising young man, to reignite the Gen Z revolution. That's where the answer is.
Okay.
The answer in beating tribal politics in this country is in the Gen Zs. The answer in getting a proper presidential candidate to face Ruto is to be found in the Gen Zs. So Morara Kibaso is focusing on the wrong people. His focus should be on the Gen Zs and the millennials, the young people of this country. Not those ones. When you focus on those ones, it is like jealousy. You are envious. You are a bitter. That it is not you, it is one of them, one of those people. So that bitterness will not help Morara Kibaso. Morara Kibaso should know that his contribution should not necessarily end up with him being the president or even a serious presidential candidate. It should be in reawakening the sleeping giant. The young men and women of this country must hear voices that will remove them from the slumber.
Okay.
So that they can take charge of their country. Yeah.
Ladies and gentlemen, that has been a good conversation here with Professor Herman Manyora. Weigh in and tell us what you actually think. Allow me to stop for now till we have this conversation again. Have yourself a lovely day. My name is Evans Okinyi.